Well, foot me. Foot me. Hello, foot nerds, and welcome to another installment of the Foot Me podcast. I am your host, TJ, here with our special weekend wild card edition. We are back to covering and recapping the FC Pro event. We are talking about Group A, round 2. That took place on the 8th of January. So we're going to be looking at the contest itself, who was there, what happened, and then our takeaways from that. So thanks for stopping down for a little off-brand. The Pro Tour is definitely not mid-tier, mid-level, or mid, but I think a lot of us that think about this game a lot and spend time playing it, we can get some information from watching higher end players play. As I've mentioned before, frequently they may be doing things that are, hard for us to understand, or that there are multiple things going on that you're unable to see immediately from watching their gameplay that's hard to integrate into the game. But I do think there are plenty of takeaways. Plus, I think it's entertaining. They've definitely taken on some ways to make it a little bit more varied this year, including the formats and things like that, which we'll be getting into. So, welcome back. For those of you that have been around, you know that we've been talking about this the past first round that they had. This is the second round of it. And just to kind of recap what this culminates in, after Group A, B, C, and D play this second round, the top two in each of the groups that have 5 in it automatically advance into what's a quarterfinalist bracket. The top seeds will play against the second seeds, and then after that, it's a win, move on, lose, go home kind of knockout bracket that will be established. If you are third or fourth in the group, although you won't be moving forward this year, you are automatically qualified for next year's seeding tournament. So you don't have to, like this year, they get to get it up into Division 4 and X, Y, or Z, and then make it through some knockouts or things. You get to bypass that. If you're fifth in the group, then you get to start all over just like you did at the beginning of this year. And so there's something to play for. Clearly, if you're first or second, but even third and fourth there's something on the line. And so that's kind of adds an element to all of the seating. With all of that being said, this group was one that when they started off, we had two that were clearly at the top of the group. We had Mark 11, who was the auto qualifier, who ended up going over and going to the bottom of the group, with Hidalgo and Lucas settling there kind of in the middle. And so lots of different questions coming out about what was going to happen with this group. How was it going to play out? What is it going to look like having round 2, this being a whole new format and a new way that the pros are playing into stuff. And so as per every week, they have a different format than any of the other weeks in terms of what they could draft and their budget and things along those lines. So let's get into that now. I will say that prior to this, I was in Mark 11 stream and had asked about the draft when they know. And apparently about 3 days ahead of time, they'll know, like whenever they release the draft online is when they get it. And so for those of you that don't know, if you go to the FC Pro Live web page, which sometimes works better than other times, GGEA, you can go to the draft or draft preview or whatever, and there is, I believe it'll be on Thursday of the week. It usually pops up Thursday or Friday. You can go in and you can do your own version of the draft. And so you can see what the requirements are, what do they have to meet, what are the budgets, things along those lines. So, but the reason you're listening to this is so you don't have to go check that information out. And I am here for that. So, what was this week's format. All right. It was an 8 million coin budget, so a little higher than some of the other ones that we've had leading up to this. They were limited to only having one card from each promo. Which meant there were 5 gold Mbappes and there were 5 blue or green BVDs. After that, you had also Hansen in all 5 teams, either as the her red or her inform. So either her rule breakers or the inform Hansen was in all 5 squads as well. Bellingham was in 4 in some format. Ginola, Valverde, Putellas ended up in 3 of the 5, which then does push us into an area that's a little different. I think this format was a bit of a W in that the teams were not as identical, or there wasn't 75% was the same. There were a lot more variations, whether that be in the center back roles, who you were pairing up with VVD, whether that was Thunderstruck Varane in a couple of cases. Company made an appearance. The keeper situation was a little bit more flexible. Schmeichel, Van de Sar, a few of those floating around in there. Pele was picked by one player is relatively more expensive. You see that 2 of them had bronze, silver, and a gold common all on the bench to help them out. I will say, if those of you that are Price is Right fans, Umut is the one who got closest to the pin here. Out of the $8 million, out of the 8 million coin budget, Umut's team cost 7,999,750 coins. So was the closest. There were a few in the 799.8 range. So most everybody used all of their coins for this one. So maybe something that we learned in weeks past, where a few folks maybe left a few coins on the table, that you want to make sure you're trying to maximize that strategy. In terms of Kim Watch, out of the 5, we did have one actual full Kim team. So that was Lucas. He had a 33 Kim team, whereas Yilmaz had like a 25 Kim team as our low. The others range between 29 and 28. So part of that, because they're using radioactive players and icons and heroes, kind of helps along those ways. But again, Max Kim not important, but no Kim also not a thing. So I think there is it's a bonus, it's a buffer, it's something they think about, but it certainly doesn't drive everything. So now, based on those teams in that format, what we were looking at is Yilmaz and Umut, who were going into this, like I said, clearly at the top with 3 wins and a tie. And then you had Hidalgo with his 2-0-2 record, Lucas 1-0-3, Mark 0-0-4 coming into this. Now, as you can imagine, they then sat for a month, watched the others, did other things, watched, there was a patch. They've been playing, some of them are content creators, some of them are in other kind of competitive modes and things along those lines. So there was a lot to think about coming into this. They also did a little bit more in terms of background and what they were doing, and what facility, how long they were in the facility, things along those lines that was a little bit more pulling back the curtain to get an idea. Since they've all been through it once and done it, you would assume that the nerves and things that might have been there, now they kind of know that it's old hat. Maybe if you're coming in and you're, a Hidalgo or a Lucas, and you're trying to, you have a chance, especially Hidalgo, to, get up into that top 2 and actually promote. You certainly want to make sure you're holding on to 3 and 4, that you don't fall down and trade places with, Mark, and have to, qualify for next year. So everybody had a little bit of a different mindset possibly coming into this. And so it was interesting to see how that was going to shake out. What ended up happening is it stayed in the exact same order, but not in as straightforward of a way as you might think. So Yilmaz and Umut played, and actually that is one of the better games. I don't know if you're listening to this, if me telling you who won or lost ends up being a spoiler that would prevent you from going back and watching it, or if you listen to this, because that way you don't have to go back and watch it, or I don't know. anyway, really good game. Worth checking out. Definitely two of the more competitive guys on the scene. They play against each other a lot. This was brought up on the actual broadcast because they're in so many tournaments, and you get that deep at so many tournaments, you're going to run into each other. So they have quite a history with each other. And, I thought it was one of the more, consummate matches. That being said, there is by far the most Mbappe of Mbappe things that happen in this match, in which Mbappe shoots into a defensive player who then blocks the ball, and then Mbappe just takes it from him and then puts it in the goal. So, I mean, it is the quintessential bounce back, rebound, tackle, kidding, just kidding, meta that we all face on a basis of playing, whether you're in rivals or weekend league or whatever. This goal happens, and it happened here on the pro stage in a LAN with all of those things that you could think of that are safeguards or whatever in place. So I do think that is one of the things that we can take away, is that when these pros, top tier skill level type players, are still having to fight through those things. Now, when you have two people at the same skill level, whether that's high, medium, or low, these can be the things that end up deciding the match. In this particular, it was not. I do believe it was it was at least a two goal deficit, but it's still very frustrating when you feel like you've done everything right and the payoff is they get a goal. So that I thought that was an interesting takeaway. But again, you can watch the whole broadcast again on YouTube if you want to see the whole 3 hour and 48 minute put together, which includes the breaks and all their you know prognostications and discussions of the FC Pro stuff, which will the cards and the market, and we'll get to that here in a minute, and the production and so forth. But despite there being all kinds of potential, at the end of the day, Yilmaz comes out on top. Hummet goes in second. Hidalgo and Lucas third and fourth, with Mark 11 coming up in fifth spot. And Hidalgo, like I said, had a chance, was in a position, was tightened some games, and then they got away from him. Lucas also, very emotional player, high when he's high, lows when he's low, and he really ended up kind of seeing his chance to advance go away kind of early in terms of a match result, and you could see that he really wore that on his face, but was able to then turn around and perform really well after that. So kudos to him. But I will say clearly, congratulations and all praise to Yilmaz and Umut, who are going to move on and have a chance to, win the whole thing. And either one of them could absolutely do it, depending on the day and the matchup and the format and all of those things. Both of them, consummate professionals, lots of experience that are going to be in a good spot. That being said, by far the most entertaining and the most, like, Mark was the one who stood out to me. So Mark 11, if you don't know, he's from Oceania. Like I said, was I believe got second in the World Championships earlier, which is why he was auto qualified. Didn't necessarily have as long on this version of the game going into it, and that kind of showed in week one. And he looked very dejected and unhappy. Coming into this week, though, man, you want to talk about just a great attitude based on where he was at and the position that he was in. Played all of these games, to very tough. Got his first win. Took some people to some really, kind of tough games. Also, like, some of the goals that he gave up were ones that he could have very easily gotten, irate at, but did not. And just kind of kept his cool and kept plugging along, and was just, what I thought was just a great attitude and a great demonstration of, what it means to be a sportsman, and our activity and things along those lines. If you don't follow him on X, it's at Mark, MARRKK Mark11 underscore. So MARRKK11 _ That's his X. You can also find him streaming. He does a lot of weekend leagues where, he hasn't lost a weekend league game in something like months, and he plays on multiple accounts. So I think he's like 260-0 or something like that. You can find those on YouTube as well. So I would encourage you to, really support him. I thought, just personality wise and like his reactions, and just he's a very affable dude. Like, if you're looking for someone to check out or haven't really, in terms of folks that are on the pro scene, things like that, I would, we all know who Anders are, things like that, and, good, bad, or otherwise, and why folks gravitate towards that, whether, that's for them to determine. But I would definitely encourage you, if you're looking for someone to just kind of support or have on your radar, I would, say that Mark11 is one that I think will be competitive and showing up in a lot of these others. And even aside from that, I think has great potential in terms of, content, the way he interacts with stream, just his overall personality. I think he is, somebody we're going to see for a while if he decides that he wants to keep doing this. So, anyway, whenever we just to kind of follow on to that, like I said, I really enjoyed, Mark had ended up beating Lucas, and that was, kind of was what knocked Lucas probably out of being able to advance. But then he ended up rebounding against Hidalgo the next game, and that's kind of what kept Hidalgo from being able to advance. And so it was, this kind of, this war of attrition. I think we're going to see this in the coming weeks. Some of them are a little closer. And so it might be, we're going to find out it's going to be a little bit less certain, and it may take us longer to figure it out. To be honest, about 2 hours in, we pretty much knew who was advancing and who was going to be in third and fourth. And we were just going through some of the motions. I don't think that'll be true for the other ones. And even though those games might have not been for as big a stakes, they were still some really, quality gameplay, and you getting a chance to see a number of players being used that aren't typically used in these kinds of pro formats and pro tournaments. So again, I think the Umaz match, 2 hours, if you're watching the full thing, it's about 2 hours in, was, one of their main kind of, the, I guess, keystone match, or your main match that they were going to want to have you kind of, be watching, since it's the two top at the table. And, great to see them do it. Of course, little to no matter whether whichever won or lost, as that was going on. Again, as we transition from just talking about the performances and the gameplay, I think now is a good time to talk a little bit about presentation. We usually stop down and talk about how they've decided to, put on their show. Clearly, esports tries to model after Nani, or just sports. So we see a little bit of that with the desk and so forth. We're doing a standing version versus a sitting version. And I know there's a reason for all of these things. This week there was like alluded to earlier, more of them walking into the studio, like, not, and by that, not just the coming down the tunnel to sit at their chair, but like them coming to the facility, like the getting off the bus kind of things that you would see at an NFL game, or possibly football, basketball, things like that, them walking through the tunnel to the dressing room, things like that. A little bit more of that. They were, pregame interviews, which we started to see pop up a little bit there. We're playing around a little bit, I think, with the wardrobe of the folks that are the commentators and folks that are on the desk. Continue to do that and figure out the best way to get the most out of it. They moved away from the goal sounds and things that they were playing around with music wise. So I do think it's interesting that this is a canvas for them, that they're continuing to like do things with on a weekly basis to try to get better and improve. At the same time, when it comes to the game and other stuff, they're maybe a little bit, let's wait till next year. Of course, I do think we're seeing EA react a lot faster and a lot quicker, in terms of catering to the community, in terms of what it's maybe putting in, packs or SBCs or things like that in order to answer to things that they've definitely seen folks say, hey, we could do better at this. And I feel like they're doing the same. They're watching these broadcasts like, oh, maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that. I'm sure there are some folks involved that have a broadcast history that are providing insight and information and suggestions, and they're just continuing to work through this as a young in terms of production. A lot of these folks, whether you're a League of Legends or whatever, if you go back and watch some of their first streamed events, things like that, they have lots of issues, and they've kind of worked on a number of things to kind of hone that. And I think this is something we're going to continue to see as FC Pro and Pro Live and tournaments and EA and all of this continues to push things out. During the presentation, they went over the nominees for Team of the Year, men's and women's, and so they had a chance to talk about those and let people know about the voting. I'll be interested to see if it increases voting, but since the people that are likely to watch this are already pretty hardcore, my guess is maybe a little, but who knows? I think at the time that I was watching, this was around 100K, maybe 150, which is a drop off from the 250 and things that we saw earlier whenever we first launched this. So will it be able to retain? Will we see like 100K for the next few weeks and then it'll jump back up? Oh, I forgot it was coming back, and so now you'll be more on top of it? Hard to say, but hopefully you were able to watch and get your rewards. This time it's like a 2 players pack and a gold pack of some sort. So, and if you do all of those, you eventually get another big one. And again, if you ever miss any, watch the rebroadcast on Twitch or the rebroadcast on YouTube. You can't just go watch the downloaded VOD. That doesn't work, but they will rebroadcast pretty quickly after they conclude. And so if you just watch that for an hour, that can also get you what you need in terms of your claims for the objectives and stuff like that. Now, FC Pro was unique in that they attached some live cards to them, and we talked a little bit about these every week. And so, just as a kind of test, this being the first run through, I thought there might be some interesting data you would want to know about based on some of these prices. So, for example, we knew that Umit and was going to advance. His player was the Lodi SBC. I think he gets another one on top of that. So if you did that and you run a La Liga team, not La Liga, a Ligue 1 team, and he's around, then you might want to check that out. He's probably going to get a +1 upgrade, so you might want to use him. And then Yilmaz had the Malin card, which was one of the items that early on folks were like, oh, this would be a good one to invest in. It's so cheap. He's got a good chance to move on. It's going to get a bunch of upgrades. And that's exactly what's happened, right? He's moving on. It's going to get upgraded to an 88. Right now it's an 87. And prior to the tournament, it was trading around 30K. And now that he has moved on and is going to guarantee jump up from 87 to 88, it is now trading at 40K, which isn't nothing, but also if you were thinking this is going to be some gigantic return, yikes. Unfortunately, those were the two that actually, did well. Hidalgo and Lucas were in a very unique situation in that if you were speculating that one of them could make it out, that would end up being a bump to the card, or if they could get to 10 points, which, Hidalgo was going to be really like, he was set up to where he had a chance to get to the 10 points that he needed to move on or to get the upgrade that was necessary for his card. Unfortunately, Hidalgo ended up with 9 points, and then Lucas 7, Mark 6. So what that ended up meaning is that Hidalgo did not get the bonus or the upgrade for his card. And so this was the 87 Mane. that was trading at 404K prior to Monday and is now at 207K. So, lost almost 200K from not having a chance. Now you were already rolling the dice that was going to like hit, but that 404K, it would be hard to assume. I guess maybe it would go up to maybe 5, 6. I don't know if you were likely going to gain 200 or lose 200. If it would go both directions, we'll never know. But it ended up losing some points. Lucas had the 88 Kolo Muani, who actually dropped from 380 down to 300K. So again, an 80K loss, but he was in third, less likely to kind of move up. The idea that it would be a little less volatile makes sense. And so the real big kind of risk reward option, I guess, was Hidalgo, and it turned out to be all risk, no reward. So unfortunately, if you invested a lot in Manes, you are, suffering today, and I apologize, especially since that 404K investments are, that's a lot. Like if you bought 10 Malins for like 300K and then you sell them for 400K minus 5%, that's not bad. It's a 300K to get back, 60 or 70K at the end of the day. So, so if that was what you did, great job. Congratulations. I hope that works out for you. But I do think this is going to be an area that maybe EA looks at next year in terms of, are we waiting too long to upgrade these? Clearly they could all go into Evos, and that's a whole nother, kettle of fish and, speculation. But, might EA opt to give them new cards for round 2 that could, increase the hype and keep things going? Has there been enough hype over the cards for these round 2 that have been around since round 1 that, are justifying this? Or do they really just want to get people interested early on, and they figure if they hook them, then that would keep them watching moving forward? Hard to say what their overall intent was. Maybe we see the exact same thing next year. Maybe it gets a little bit tweaked. I do think a refresh of some sort would be an interesting way of keeping it active, adding live cards in, keeping people interested in the pro tournament. That maybe a whole lot of folks that either didn't do the SBCs or picked one that's already kind of flopped, they're now out of it. So like, why would they bother coming back? Maybe that's even why we, lost 100K viewers from, early on to now. So could something as simple as a refresh on like new card, new birth, new whatever moving forward might be something they look at. So I know they're going to have another FC Pro tournament, and they'll attach new cards to that. Maybe they'll be purple, maybe they'll be something different, maybe they'll tweak some things about it. But either way, an interesting element. With that being said, they were still trying to talk up on the broadcast about how, like, oh, trading in Malins and people are buying Malins, and how's the Malin thing going? I feel like they're trying a little too hard there at this point, especially given that there's not that much trade or volatility when it comes to, these cards and stuff like that. Again, there was the Mystery Nation, which at first somebody was suggested might have been like Argentina. I think it turned out to be Korea. If you were looking for that, it's under Republic of Korea. For those of you that don't know the way the world works, and you're like, I could never find Korea. Look under R for Republic, or is it under K? But it still says Republic of Korea. I don't know. It's been a while since I've had to look it up. But anyway, I believe that was the one with some finesse shots. You got like an 83 player pick, or not even a pick, an 83 player pack with 183 in it. So if you did that and knocked it out the park, congratulations. No, I didn't do that. So anyway, and if you were, I guess we could just say that Mark's card was that Jinru card that was an SBC that nobody did and no one really cared about. So no harm, no foul there. Anyway, and all in all, I'm looking forward to, as this progresses on. Again, we got Group B next week, then C and D, and we'll have a different kind of version. We'll know like on Friday what their draft is going to look like. Get a chance to watch and see how this goes, and then of course we're gonna setting us up for the final I think that's going to be maybe around the 10th or the 17th. I'm not exactly sure. I still need to look into that, but I know the next 3 weeks we have these groups to set up and get our bracket set out so that we can then have a tournament to finish up, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. And I think the more you're watching up until the tournament, the more involved you will be in said tournament. So if nothing else, just kind of catching up and keeping up with it's going to make whenever the big tournament comes up, I think it'll make it even that much more exciting, entertaining. If nothing else, the idea that if you know the personalities of the folks that are there, if you have somebody that you enjoy that's not just like a flag or, is like has a card that you want or whatever, that when you can start to kind of see their personality and identify play styles and start relating to particular folks, that's how you become a fan of them. Some of us are fans of teams because of geographic location to them, because of relationships that we had in terms of our family and a history of supporting particular groups. And with something clearly like this, there's none of that, right? Maybe it's geographic because you're Australian, you'll support Australians, or if you're an American, you'll support, I don't know who you support because no Americans are, at those top tiers. It's the same problem if you're watching StarCraft or League of Legends and you're rooting for NA. It's almost like, uh-oh. It's like, nah, because you're not gonna, kind of move forward. But the more that we watch, the more that we get into this, the more that we kind of add some kind of era to it, the more likely we are to see people getting more motivated and moving into it and adding an element of like, this is something they want to do, and it pushes, and iron sharpens iron, and maybe someday we do have like some NA folks that are in there, holding their own and taking some names and playing soccer instead of football. But all in all, I would say that presentation's been good, the competition's been good. The format's definitely been interesting for those of us that like to get into those types of things. It's really neat to look at all the drafts and some of the cards that they're using, and determining if those are cards that either you have or you want to try, or maybe someone you've been looking at for a while, like, oh well, maybe that pushes you over the top. So you can always go back and look at those. But again, I would encourage you, if you haven't watched it, check out some of those games. You can watch them individually, or you can watch the whole thing. But all in all, I would have to say, looking forward to Group B and C, and then eventually getting into the thing. So it is taking a while, but I think it will be worth the wait. So again, I want to thank you for stopping in for this weekend wildcard edition. Again, if you are a modder of your controllers, make sure you check out extremerate.com. They have some all kinds of modding options for your modding needs. You can use foot me at checkout. You get a little discount and I get a little discount, so scratching backs would be awesome. And again, I know I made this call out on my midweek, or the other pod that I do on Mondays, the other episode. But if you are a small creator or an up and coming creator, or whether YouTube, Twitch, whatever, that's in the foot universe, and you would like to be spotlighted or have a chance to kind of share your story and get a little bit more exposure, please reach out to me on X. You can send me a message there at TJ underscore WHIZ. And we'd love to maybe put you on an episode where I'm trying to promote those kinds of things and get the community behind some of our local creators, if you will, our local ecosystem of creators, the Foot Me ecosystem of creators. So anyway, it's been wonderful getting a chance to share this with you. There's not a whole lot of other folks that I can nerd out and talk about a competitive online FIFA tournament. So thanks for stopping down with that, and hopefully you'll pop back in next weekend when we cover the B group and all of that implies. But until then, hopefully your weeks go well, your weekends go even better, and you don't find yourself in a situation where you have to turn around, look up, and just say, "Foot me."